This video will look at the critical path method, also known as critical path analysis. So what we're doing here is we're looking at ways of completing a project and looking at the activities that go to make up the project, looking at the sequence of those activities and the relationship between the activities to try to find which activities are critical, must be completed, and which have slack in their production. Slack means they don't have to be started or finished on the particular date. They may have some latitude as to when they start and when they finish, within limits, but they may have some. So what this technique does is it works out for a project what are the essential and important activities. So critical path analysis it's a mathematical algorithm for scheduling a set of project activities. Now, an algorithm is just a way of performing calculations. An algorithm it's like a formula. It's like a procedure that's worked out in mathematics to say that something comes in front of something else, something is related, A is related to B, let's say, through some mathematical function. In other words, there is a precise relationship between the activities, between A and B or C or whatever. There are precise relationships, and we call this an algorithm. Now, the critical path method is a mathematically based algorithm for scheduling a set of project activities. So the project activities are all set out according to some algorithm. They're calculated on the basis of some calculation. And that's what the critical path method is. It gives us a method for calculating the various activities, the sequence of the activities, and the relationships between the activities. Once we know those, we can calculate which activities are critical, which are not so critical. Right. It's a very important tool for effective project management, and project management is increasingly seen as important because projects have to be carried through. They have to be monitored, progressed, chased up, and management needs to know what is the best sequence of activities. Management needs to know how the project is going to be delivered. So this is an important tool. It's commonly used with all forms of projects, including construction, software development, research projects, product development, engineering, plant maintenance, and so on. So it's widespread in its use. Many companies use this type of approach. Any project with interdependencies or interdependent activities can apply this method of scheduling. So if a product, or a project I should say, if a project has got many activities coming off it, activities that must be completed before the project is completed, then those activities, once the relationship between each of the activities is known, then it's possible to use this approach. So it is powerful in that sense. Now, the essential technique for using CPM is to construct a model that includes the following: a list of all the activities required to complete the project. It's known sometimes as the work breakdown structure. So all the activities that go to make up the project must be specified. There must be a complete list of the activities that go to make up the project. So if it's an engineering product, then which procedures are necessary before the next set of procedures. The holes must be drilled out before the nut or the bolt or whatever can be inserted into it. So it's essential that one activity comes before another, and that is specified. So what this technique forces management to do is to itemize all of the steps in the project, list out all the activities, so that an optimum route, a best route, can be worked out to complete the project. The time duration that each activity will take to be completed must be calculated as well. There must be known. So not only is the sequence important, but how long each step takes. That's important, because clearly if one task depends on the previous task, then that task can't start until the previous one is finished. So knowing the times it takes to complete the tasks is important. And also the dependencies between the activities, how they're connected. How is activity A connected to activity C and D and B? And how is B connected to G and C? And so on. So it can get very complicated, but the dependencies must be worked out, because one needs to come in front of the other. The sequences must be correct, and the dependencies determine which one goes in front of which. So the critical path method, CPM, calculates the longest path of planned activities to the end of the project. So the longest path is the critical path. The earliest and latest that each activity can start and finish without making the project longer. So it specifies the earliest and the latest that each activity can start and finish without making the project any longer. That's the critical path. It determines the critical activities. Which activities are on the critical path, which activities must be engaged, and which ones come in front of the others. What's the sequence, and how long will it take, and how are they dependent or interdependent? And prioritize the activities for effective management and to shorten the planned critical path of the project. And this is done by fast tracking, performing more activities in parallel. So it might be, depending on the dependencies in the network diagram, a set of little boxes and arrows, if you like, which specifies the relationship between each activity. But looking at that, it might be possible to perform some activities in parallel, which is sometimes known as fast tracking, or crashing the critical path. In other words, shortening the durations of the critical path by adding resources. So looking at the critical path and then saying, well, we could find extra resources, perhaps somewhere in the organization, but in the extra resources, and the critical path will be shorter. That's a possibility. So how to use CPM? Well, define the project and identify each activity. That's essential. That's the starting point. Second, develop relationships amongst the activities. Decide which activities must precede and which must follow others. So look at the activities, decide which ones come in front, which ones are more important than the other ones in terms of timing, and make sure that the sequence is laid out logically. Make sure the sequence is accurate. Draw a network connecting all of the activities. Draw little arrows connecting them to show which ones depends on which. So there is a clear picture of which activities are important in terms of their location in the project itself. Where are they at the start or the middle, at the end? What depends on them and what do they depend on? And assign time, or if you like, cost estimates to each activity. Usually it's done in terms of time. Time is the critical factor in this. Compute the longest time through the network. This is called the critical path. The longest time is the one that there is no flexibility. It must be completed in that time. That's why it's critical. Use the network to help plan, schedule, monitor and control the project. Well, once the network diagram has been worked out, boxes specifying the activities and arrows connecting them to the next activities or the previous activities, once all of that's been worked out, then that can be used to schedule and monitor and control the project. Calculate the earliest start time and earliest finish time. Also the latest start time and the latest finish time. And determine the total float, or if you like the slack, for each activity on the basis of differences between the earliest time and the latest time. If there is a difference between the earliest time and the latest time, then there is slack in the system. If the earliest time and the latest time are the same, then it is critical. And calculate the total duration of the product. Optimize costs if possible by shifting resources from one activity to the next, so as the whole project becomes optimized. If you look at a network diagram, it would probably look something like that. Maybe little rectangular boxes instead, but anyway, it's not the point. The point is 1 goes to 2, 2 goes to 3, 3 goes to 4, 4 goes to 8, 2 goes to 6, 6 goes to 4, 6 also goes to 7, and 7 goes to 8. So it's showing the different tasks. These are different tasks in here. Which one is most important and the timing for each one. And if we have a look at a table of that, we could have, let's say the activities are to construct a new plant. Well, activity 1 to 2 will take 4 months. Activity 2 to 3 could take 2 months. Activity 4 to 6 will take 9 months. And we can represent that on the diagram. Let's take 1 to 2 is 4 months. 1 to 2 is 4 months. 2 to 3 is 2 months. 2 to 3 is 2 months. Now what we're trying to do is find the critical path. Now in the network diagram, path 1 to 2, 1 to 2 to 4 to 6 to 8. So 1 to 2 to 4 to 6 to 8. Added up 1, 10, 16, 20. 20 days. This is the critical path. If we add up the others, we go 4, 6, 9, 10. 10 days. And we can go down here and go a different route again. So we have different paths, but that one there is the longest. So that is the critical path. There's no flexibility whatever in that path. That path must be completed in that sequence. Now the limitations of critical path method, well, precise time must be known. Not true in many real life situations, not true at all. These are estimates at best. Changes in any of them affects the entire evaluation. So if times were changed in any of them, then the whole calculation would have to be changed. And this method is not useful if we have an indefinite start and finish time. If we're not sure when it's to start, then it may get out of date. It may be a practical issue that all of the interdependencies and the timings are simply knocked out because of a late start. They change over time. It facilitates decision making. It's not a fix. It's not the ultimate answer. It's not a panacea. It's not the answer to everything. It just facilitates decision making when looking at how to deliver a project, looking at the activities, look at the interdependencies between the activities, look at the timings, and it's possible to work out what is critical, the critical path. That's what it's useful for. So that concludes this talk. This is just very superficially introducing the idea of critical path method, critical path analysis. So it's just general introduction to the topic. And let's leave it at that. So thank you for watching.